You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% Podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome to today's episode of the 1% Podcast, the show where we interview young adults who are battling or surviving an unexpected cancer diagnosis. You are not alone, and I promise, by consuming today's content, your soul will be fed with the hope, courage, and inspiration you need to keep fighting for today. I'm excited to be on your journey with you today. If you haven't done so already, be sure to head over to 1percentpodcast.com to sign up for our email list to see the latest news and updates for all our guests on the show. You can also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1% Podcast. If you want to join in on some of our discussions, please join our Facebook group, the 1% Podcast. To contact me directly for content, questions, or booking events, you can email me at info@1percentpodcast.com. Welcome, everyone, to the 50th episode of the 1% Podcast. Last September, when I started the podcast, I had no idea the way it would dramatically impact the cancer community. I've talked to people all over the world. The podcast has actually been downloaded in over 25 different countries. I cannot believe the type of feedback that we've been getting as well, too, regarding text messages, phone calls, emails, social media posts, all these people reaching out just let me know there was a great need of community in our cancer world. Whether you're a survivor, caregiver, whether you're currently going through cancer, we are all here for you. We are all in this together. And I love the way the podcast has really brought people in from all over the world. So thank you guys so much for listening to all 48 episodes. Today is the 49th episode with Miss Lourdes Colon. You guys are going to love the story. I had a chance to interview her and her husband a couple of weeks ago, and the dramatic story that she tells about giving everyone 3 options, option A, option B, and option C. She's going to go into detail on what all of those mean, but I'll share with you guys just a little bit. Option A is just immediately doing what the doctor says. Just whatever you say, I'm taking that route, and then we're going that way. Option B is doing nothing at all and just living out the rest of your life. And option C is becoming a self-advocate, where you take control of your style of treatment and you get really involved and choose the direct path that you want to go in. So we talk about those 3 things today. She shares her amazing story. Lourdes was actually on the show without a trace for a long time and had a holding deal with CBS. So she had at the height of her career, she had all this going on, and all of a sudden she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. You guys are going to hear a great story from Lourdes today. But before we get into Lourdes' story, let's go over today's 1% Moment of Truth. Today's 1% Moment of Truth is about connecting with other human beings. Listen, I love technology. Because of technology, you're hearing this podcast through an app on your phone more than likely. But communicating with other people is such a powerful thing. We hear lots of times that our net worth equals our network, which is so totally true. This past week, I had an opportunity to go to a speaking conference. It was kind of a last-minute thing for me, but a great opportunity opened up where I went and met with a lot of speakers from all over the U.S., and I had an opportunity to connect with people that I never would have contacted or connected with before, and learn from a very, very powerful speaker. So in that social group that we had, we had younger people, we had older adults, people that fell right in the middle. And we got so much great feedback on speaking and communicating and talking. And the type of relationships that I built with those 10 people in that room, I'll have for forever. And I think it's really important for us to get outside of our comfort zone and each day connect with someone new. And this could be in the grocery store. It could be, for me, you guys know that I build custom furniture for a living, whether it's at Home Depot, whether it's any supplier, anything like that. Just start with having a conversation with someone about asking them how they are for the day, talking to them, maybe give them a compliment. But connecting with other people is so important because we get lost in our phones. Apple has a new tracker on their phone that shows you how much screen time that you consistently have every day. And look, my screen time is 4 to 5 hours a day. So if I'm sleeping 8, I'm on my phone 4 to 5, there's 12 to 13 hours of my day gone. So the other half of my day, I need to be communicating with other people. So that's what I'm really encouraging for everyone to do today. Take a break from your phone. Go out and have some genuine conversations with people that you don't even know. Talk to them, get to know them. It doesn't have to be anything personal, but take an opportunity to have more human interaction and really stretch yourself and make yourself a little bit uncomfortable. When you're doing the right thing lots of times is because we get a little bit uncomfortable. But have those conversations, talk to people, listen to people, and really enjoy that connection that we all have with each other. So that's today's 1% moment of truth. As always, please continue to send me your emails, all the messages. I love the feedback I'm getting. Also, too, I'm in the process of booking new speakers, new guests for the show. I typically book a lot at a time and go through and sort them out. But I'm in the process of booking some new people. So if you know people that have a phenomenal cancer story and enjoy telling their story and connecting with other people, I'd love for you guys to shoot me an email at info@1percentpodcast.com. I'd love to have a conversation with them and be able to share their story with all of our listeners. So let's get into my interview with Miss Lourdes Colon and her husband. We had a great time talking several weeks back. And her story is phenomenal. Like, she has videos, and her new book out with her husband, Our Journey to Option C, is out now. It's selling like crazy. You guys should definitely go get a copy of that. I dropped a link to the book in the show notes. So you guys can have a chance to check that out. But it's phenomenal. The story that she has, the tumors that she has them documented. And even when she went down to Mexico to get some alternative treatment, and she shows like the tumors actually shrinking and moving in her body. It's kind of crazy. But you guys should definitely check that out. I loved our conversation. I loved everything that we spoke about. We talk about Hollywood a lot, what it's like to be a female actress and a Latino actress in Hollywood. So you guys enjoy my interview with Lourdes and her husband, Chris. All right, Miss Lourdes Colon and Chris Lavoie, welcome to the 1% Podcast. How are you guys doing in LA today?
Double outstanding. Fantastic.
Yeah, doing great.
Doing great. Perfect. Well, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I've been following your journey through some different posts that you put out on Instagram regarding your cancer story, and you have a very interesting background, and I love the way you guys are kind of doing all this together. It definitely takes a village to go through a cancer diagnosis, and using your skill set, whether it's from your past experiences in TV and film to directing and producing this documentary you guys are currently working on that'll be out in the next couple of months, to the book that you have that's currently out right now, and even to the motion picture true story of the whole deal that you guys are working on as well. I think that's amazing. I love the way you're telling the story. And like I said earlier when we were talking, that storytelling is part of the healing process. And watching someone else's story really helps people connect with you and realize that they're not alone through the journey. There's someone else that's going through the journey. And you're very, vivid with all the different things, from the tumors moving to all the things that you portray, and just the way you produce everything, I think, is beautiful. So good job on all the trailers and everything you guys have put out so far. And welcome to the show. So the first question I love to ask people is to tell us a little bit about yourself. And I know you have a very interesting background, Lourdes, prior to the whole cancer journey. Why don't you share a little bit of that with our listeners today?
Yeah, well, I'm an actress, producer, and filmmaker. And at the time of my diagnosis, I was actually doing really well in my career. I hosted a TV show called Movie Time Showcase. I was on the ballot to be considered to be a nominee on my role as Anna Rodriguez on the TV series Without a Trace. I had a holding deal with CBS. Like, life was really, really good, and I was doing really great. And then it was when I was diagnosed, and it was at the moment I realized that that was the thing I've always wanted to do. It's, I love acting. It's my thing that I always do. But there was a thing inside me that wanted to be a difference in the world. And so the diagnosis was kind of like a blessing for me, because it let me step away from acting for a while, pick up a camera, and decide to start documenting and looking for the search for the cure and using myself as a guinea pig.
I love that. Chris, how long were you guys together before she was diagnosed with cancer?
So we got married back in '99, so just over a decade actually when she got diagnosed.
Okay. So it wasn't in the beginning. It was kind of as everything was going really well. I'm sure you were excited about her career. What was your career like, at the time that she was diagnosed?
Well, I mean, so like you said, I was doing my writing, and that was getting its own legs as well. And Lourdes kind of undersells it, but she was making strides in Hollywood that people had have waited a whole lifetime to get to. So she was just about to blow up. And same thing with our writing, our collaborations when we did our writing projects together. Right there, just ready to just explode onto the scene, really. And then the diagnosis happened.
Yeah. It's crazy how, you think things can derail you when you're at a certain point, but I'm sure the things that we'll talk about today will really kind of pick back into your story and see how everything that had led up to that moment has really continued on, but obviously in a different way now. Why do you feel like it's important for you, for both you guys to be able to share this story with everyone out there?
Well, I think it's because, a lot of times, especially with cancer, and it's the growth in cancer in our time is so high. And most people just know what they're going through themselves, but you don't really have no one sharing or seeing what really happens and what one can actually do to take back control of their life. And I think it's because we keep it to ourselves. And for me, I think it was an opportunity to not keep it to myself, but to show the beauty and the ugly that goes with it when it comes to something like this. And, even with my husband, it was like, it was a teamwork. And I think that was very important. So I think this showing others that there's a way of doing things that one can adopt or to learn or educate is really important.
And there's also a series of emotions that is attached to being diagnosed with cancer. And almost, it's like this ugly word. And like you said, you hear the word cancer and it just derails your whole life. And people are afraid and rightfully so. I mean, obviously, and there's just, it's like a fear-based world to live in cancer. And I think what Lourdes has done and what we were able to accomplish through the documentary and stuff is to show people that you don't have to be afraid of cancer. There's nothing to be afraid of. In fact, she often says that you have to treat it like you have a cold. It's just something that you've got to take care of. It's not, you don't assign it to say, well, that's a death sentence or anything like that. It doesn't have to be that heavy. It's just something that you have to address and take care of. It's a health opportunity.
Yeah, and I think for me, I got clear that it is really about our bodies talking to us. Things show up, and it's like, what have we been doing in our lives? What have we, what's our intake? And that's not just in diet, but in our stress levels and the things that we're accepting in our lives that are affecting our health.
Yeah. It's one of those things that just the way you described it, like treating it like a cold and, trying to take back control of your life. So many people fear the word cancer because it has, someone they know or have seen on television or through some way has died of cancer. And so a lot of people get afraid because they think, they may die. And that's a tough emotion for anyone to deal with, especially someone who's, in the height of their career and things are going so well. The last thing you think of is potentially having, a disease where you die. And really being able to stop and address all of that, again, I think is such a beautiful thing that you guys are doing. Let's talk a little bit about, your life prior to cancer. So obviously you were doing well in your career. If for all of us who don't know what it's like to be in Hollywood, how hard is it to actually get on a show and, keep your role and continue to do well and get jobs and all those things?
It's tough. It's like, that's why when I see someone get an award for something and to be acknowledged for that hard work, it's fulfilling because you get to see that when you get to that point, you don't have to work as hard. You still have to keep working hard when it comes to fine tuning the artwork and, your performance, but you don't have to keep trying to be noticed anymore. You don't have to keep saying, I'm good at this. I can bring, the story to life if you give me that opportunity. So for many that are out there, it's a tough thing, excuse me, because it's the competition is huge. When you go in for a role, it's not just you and like 5 other people. It's like you and another 100.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's because they look so hard for that specific person. And it's not because, even when you don't get a role, it's not because you weren't good enough. It's just that they looked at everybody's good. So now they have to pick, okay, out of all the good ones, could it be that look or this look or that height or, so it's so many different things that come into play, but it's a tough one. And so it's really about just keep working hard. Even when you're filming, on the days you're not filming, you should be taking class, always working that muscle and always networking and getting to know people so that when an opportunity shows up, you're prepared for that opportunity, which will give you your success.
Yeah. So what would you feel like would be your biggest career accomplishment prior to your cancer diagnosis?
Geez, there was several. I think I would say like probably the holding deal that I had with CBS, because it's true that it doesn't happen anymore. And even when I got it, that was not even heard of anymore. That was something they probably did like in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get a holding deal when I did was probably one of my highlights of my life, because it was like everything I did was now finally paying off.
And just to be clear to people who've not heard of what a holding deal is, it basically meant that the studio had so much faith in Lourdes that they kind of got dibs. They said we want her to work for us. We don't want to lose her to another network. And so the holding deal is basically saying, we have so much faith in your talent that we want you to be a CBS star, and we need to hang on to you.
So you sign a contract, they pay you for this holding deal. So, so it's like this whole thing. And now this contract says you can work at other networks, but it's only if it doesn't get in the way with anything that I'm doing with CBS. So it was that kind of deal.
Well, yeah.
And they also then they actually look for a specific show for you. They try to actually build a show around you.
Yeah, so I guess that says a lot about your talent. They don't want to let the talent go. You're not just one person specifically for one show, but you're so talented they want to keep you on for other opportunities, which I think says a lot about you and your talent. In the acting world or being an actress, there's obviously a lot of spotlight on being a female actress right now in the news and stuff. Did you go through a lot of the tough times that you hear a lot of people talk about as you were coming up through your career?
Yes, because at that time, and still now, even though they're starting to improve on this, but at that time it was tough just to be a female to even get a lead. Almost always the lead was the man, and pretty much the female, if they did pick the female, it was Caucasian,
mm-hmm.
and sometimes Black, but when it came to Latinos, it was almost impossible. Like you were always a supporting or the thug or the poor nanny or, just
mm-hmm.
anything that was not going to be the lead. And it was tough for me because I don't mind playing supporting, but, you as an individual what you are. If you're a supporting role or if you're the characteristic, the character actor, or if you're the lead. And when you're a lead and then you have to step down and do a supporting, it's tough because you have to take all your stuff and kind of minimize it because you can never outstar the lead. And if you go too far in your performance that they feel is outstarring the lead, you won't get the role. So it was tough. It was really, really tough. But now the doors are so open. Though we still have work to do, the doors are now open, and that gives more of an opportunity now than ever before.
And the reason I asked you that was because, again, not even getting to the cancer diagnosis yet, like you obviously know what it's like to struggle and to be dissatisfied and to, really fight for something that you really want and to have, not just to be talented, but to have the hard work that follows that, to never give up. So I like to really dig into people's past a little bit and see exactly like who they were, because there's a lot of characteristics that you were probably growing and maturing before you even got to the cancer side. And it definitely sounds like that's the case for you. As you were, where were you at, I would say, when you first heard or first started noticing something was different with your body and you needed to go get checked out?
Well, funny, it actually started when everything was going great in my life. I was always, like, things would always show up. I would have a lump here and there, and then I would change certain things that I ate or drank, and then that would go away, and then something else would show up. And I could always feel like something was completely off, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. And even when I would go to the doctors, they would just say, oh, you have an infection of this, or it's nothing. We've searched and we couldn't find anything. And I'm like, there's got to be something, because I could feel that something was off. I was consistently fatigued. I didn't seem to get enough rest, so that I would go to sleep and I would wake up tired, and then I would take a nap and I would wake up tired. And, as many naps as I took a day, I should have been well rested, but instead I couldn't get enough rest. And so things were showing up already. Even then, I just couldn't figure out what it was and what was off.
Did you ignore some of those, like, I would say B symptoms that they call it initially, because you thought it was just maybe you were so stressed or you were working so hard?
Yeah, well, at first I just thought it's because I had a lot of night shoots. There was a couple of films that I did, and there was times where we had to do these night shoots, and it would take us all night. And then the next morning we'd be getting ready to go back on set, and I wasn't even done getting some sleep. So it was like sleeping a few hours a day started getting to me. So I thought, well, maybe that's it. But even after that was all done, it just didn't get better. It just seemed to get progressively worse.
So the actual day you got diagnosed, when you went to, can you, I guess you say, walk us through that moment when you were with your doctor? Were you by yourself? Did you have your family with you, or what was that moment like?
Well, I actually was by myself. My husband had to work because he had taken off a few times from the job just for things like me getting a biopsy or, these. And so we're like, I can do this on my own. I know it's going to be fine. And what's interesting is that even though I was telling everybody it's going to be fine, and even my husband was like, God, these things always show up and it always ends up to be nothing. But it was like, I still knew that it wasn't going to be good news. Like, I knew she was going to say cancer, and I didn't want to hear it. And I think I knew just because I've seen my sister years back when she had it and the things that she was going through. So my things were very similar to hers. And so I kind of knew that that's where I was going to be told. I just really didn't want to be told that.
Mm-hmm. So what was your exact diagnosis that you got from your doctor that day?
Well, when I got there, she had said the results came back and it shows that you have Hodgkin's, but we don't know if it's Hodgkin's or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Mm-hmm. And so we have to do one more test. And in that test, we'll know which one it is. And so I was like, okay. So she said, so you have cancer in the lymphatic system. We just need to find out which one it is. And I'm like, okay. And then she found it odd because I didn't respond, I think, like she expected me to respond. Mm-hmm. And so and then she said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I think it sucks. And then that's when the moment I had to say that, I think is where I got emotional and tears did stream down and she gave me a hug. But then I went to her to get to get like which one it was. And at that moment when she told me it was Hodgkin's lymphoma, it's when she started going through the things I need to do. I'm going to introduce, I'm going to connect you with and refer you to an oncologist that I think is really good. And he's a friend of mine. And then this is what they're going to do. And they're going to put this port in you. And then, so she started just telling me the things that they were going to do. And while she was telling me that, I was telling myself, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not going to do chemotherapy. I'm not going to do radiation. I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to find the cure, and I'm going to do it naturally. And then that was it. I left the office, and then I called my husband.
So what made you make that decision? Had you seen someone else go through it before, or what was your initial response? Why was your initial response? I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it my own way.
I think it's because I've seen so many people in my life, friends and family who had cancer and did do chemotherapy and radiation. And I saw it always come back. And I always saw the destruction when they were going through the treatments. And I saw how they ended up with all these other elements because of the treatments. And it wasn't like the treatment stopped it, because it seemed like it just put it in, like they call remission. It wasn't even considered a cure. It was considered a remission. We stopped the growth kind of thing. And then I thought, how can this be good? It always comes back. And a lot of times when it comes back worse. And your immune system is now shot because of the chemotherapy and radiation they've gone through. I never saw them look healthy. And then I saw all the side effects of after the fact. And then many of them, within the 15-year mark, always ended up dead because it came back metastasized. And I just thought, I don't want to do that. If my immune system is compromised right now and I'm this sick because of my lifestyle, I don't want to destroy my body to try to heal it. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't resonate with me. So the moment she said it, it just made sense that this is the thing that's been nagging me for 3 years that I need to do to be a difference in the world. And I just didn't know what it was. And so when she said I had cancer, I instantly knew it was that. And so that's why it was just like my whole mind, body, and spirit just said, this is what you're going to do. And so that's what I did.
And Chris, when you got the phone call that, Lourdes had cancer, what were you thinking?
Well, so, I was at work, like she said, and so I knew that I was expecting the phone call, but Lourdes said she kind of had an idea that for sure it was, but I was really like more of in a hopeful space because like I said, she had weird things come up before, and literally every time it was just like, oh, that turned out to be nothing. We're great, move on. And so I was kind of hoping for that, like more thinking it was going to be that than hoping, I guess. I just kind of assumed it was going to be that again. And I got the call and she told me, and when she told me, it was really matter of fact. And that was the very telling part. She was just straightforward with it. I've got cancer. And so that was like a gut punch. And I instantly went into like, I got to be supportive. Like this can't affect me right now. I'm not, I need to be supportive. So I said something to the effect of, oh, well, we know what it is now. So, now we just take care of it and it'll be fine. And this and the next thing. Now in my mind, when I was saying we'll take care of it, I was thinking you'll have to start the chemotherapy. You have to start the radiation. We'll just deal with this and then we'll get past this. And then life was good, and I was just trying to be supportive. It wasn't until I hung up the phone on Lourdes, after we talked back and forth and I tried to be supportive, that I kind of broke down by myself, in the break room.
Yeah. What was your biggest worry? What was your biggest concern when you broke down?
Well, there's a couple of things. So like I said, Lourdes and I had only been married for just over a decade at this point. So, our wedding vows were still fresh, in sickness and health and all that other stuff. You think to yourself, that bad stuff that's said in that whole wedding vow thing, that's decades down the road. We've got so much time before that stuff starts happening. And so in a little way, I felt kind of robbed, like, wait a minute, this is way too soon for all of this. Mm-hmm. And like I said, my mindset was exactly as everybody else's mindset was. The cancer is like, you hear the word cancer and it equates to death. Okay, well, people die from this. So for me, my grandmother died of breast cancer. My aunt died of breast cancer. Other friends and family that I knew had died of cancer. And so like you had said earlier, it's just people will equate the two because everybody's been affected in that way. Like we all know someone who had cancer and passed away because of it. And so that's where the breakdown was coming from, because why now? Why isn't she's supposed to be healthy and I'm healthy and this is we're still young. What is going on with this? And so I thought I don't want to lose her. And that was immediately like the fear that was running through my mind was, and I guess that's what it was more than anything. I was just terrified.
Mm-hmm. Lourdes, when they started your treatment, what kind of regimen did they put you on initially? Did you have any kind of surgery, or did you do any chemo or radiation, or did you do what was your own method that you were I guess you had laid out for yourself? I know you did a lot of things with your diet. What did your treatment option and plan look like?
Well, first I had to do a lot of research. It was so important to understand everything. What cancer is. It's a mutated cell and it's multiplying, and what caused it. So I had to understand what was it that was happening so that I can try to fix it, and how do I fix it. So I read so many books out there about cancer and fighting cancer naturally, and diet and cleansing and detoxing, and I read so many, and then I made it a point to start meeting people that have done it and that did it naturally, that did things holistically, that turned things around. And it's funny because there were so many out there, and all of it was diet, but they also had something extra. Like one would do it with this one drink that I tried, and there was just no way on the planet I could do it, which was with the baking soda. I just couldn't do it. You got to do it with this baking soda and a little maple syrup and water, and it was definitely not for me. I'm like, I tried, and oh my gosh, I'm like, how do people do it? And I mean, I've met people that did it and literally got rid of it that way. And I'm like, well, that's not going to be my way, because I just can't get myself to drink it. It was just disgusting. And then I had someone else who did it, and it was through microbiotic diet. And I did that, and that did seem to slow the growth. It didn't seem to get rid of it at the moment. I mean, it was a really slow process, and I think it's because it was cooked food. And then when I learned this other way, where it was all raw, vegan, it had to be, nothing cooked. It had to be a lot of juicing, and when you ate something, it was raw, and it had to be a combination of different greens and stuff. And you had to, be easy on the fruit. You had to cut that out, and if you ate fruit, it had to be certain things like the noni fruit, which, by the way, it's creepy looking and feeling and tasting, but it looks almost like a cancer cell. It's disgusting. But it's these things you had to do. And that one seemed to resonate with me more, because the moment I started, I cut out all the sugar, because I found out how sugar destroys the mitochondria of your cells, and it breaks down your immune system, and it's a cancer feeder, and like all these things, right? So, and that was tough for me, because prior to this, I pretty much ate nothing but sugar for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. I had sandwich ice creams and desserts and brownies with ice cream on top of it. Like that was my meals. And so all of a sudden I had to turn this around, and it was tough. And it's like, when you have this sugar craving and you're used to it and it's addiction, it's tough. So I literally had to get rid of all the sugar. And I started finding that everything I had in my cabinet, one of the ingredients was sugar. And I'm like, how does even crackers have sugar? Like everything had sugar. So I got rid of all that. If it was in a box bag or a can, I didn't touch it. I made sure it was raw. I made sure it was organic. It was really hard to do, but it's where I saw the shrinkage, where I started seeing the tumors going away, and I started seeing things that I was dispelling that was disgusting, but was coming out. And I get my energy back. I was sleeping good at night. I was waking up with no problem. It was like this whole turnaround. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So it was that. It was things that I found called Protocell 50. And again, that all depended on the type of cancer you had. There was wheatgrass, Asiac tea, another one. There's really a long list of things that I started doing and trying. And is where I really started seeing the change. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is great.
So how long after you started doing the raw diet did you start noticing a change?
Actually, that was pretty quickly. Within a couple of days, I would say that I just had all my energy back. And in fact, when I started juicing and stuff, doing all the fresh juices at home, and that was basically veggies. It wasn't really no fruits at all. It was like there was a time where I couldn't sleep on my left side because of the pressure. And after doing all this, all of a sudden I could sleep on my left side. There was no more pressure. And the tumors that I had, they were just like you almost couldn't see them. And it got to a point, and this was like within a week. Within a week, you barely seen them. And by the third week, you really couldn't see them at all. And so everything just started shrinking, and I didn't feel sick anymore. Like everything, I just felt, it was weird because even while some of the cancer was still present, I felt healthier than I had ever felt in my entire life. It was really weird.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through that I started learning that there were certain tests and stuff that one does that actually is not just a cancer causer, but if you have cancer present, it actually spreads it. And it's actually a test that you do to stage your cancer. And I'm like, oh, wow. And that's when I decided to document that and show how that's going to spread what I had, had already almost got rid of. And it was in that things got really bad afterwards. But prior to that test, I was doing amazingly well.
And Chris, whenever Lourdes started changing her diet, did that mean you couldn't eat the brownies and ice cream anymore as well, or how'd that?
Yeah, it was all that. But the reality is that Lourdes, to her part, Lourdes was kind of really early on in what she decided. She was kind of on her own because I was against, I was against her not going to do the oncology route, mm-hmm. And we actually had a real problem between us because of that. And literally every one of Lourdes's family were against her, and she lost friends over this decision. But on the other side of it, she had friends that were strengthened and friendship bonds that were strengthened because of the decision. And then I had to come to terms with the fact, and it was once Lourdes, you don't know her that well, but once she decides on something, that's it. She's decided she's going to do this thing, and you can call it stubborn, I guess, but it's more of just a strong will. And I came to a conclusion through a conversation with my mother, who kind of talked me down, I guess, because I was fit to be tied. And she said, look, she's going to do it, whether you're supportive of her or not. But do you really want to be one of the people fighting her? You want to be the additional fight for her? Or do you want to just support her and make her and help her make her decisions that she, because this is her body, this is her life, and you've got an option. You can be the problem, or you can be part of the solution. And so that's kind of what shifted me. So and it wasn't just no more sweets; it was no more meat, because we learned that that meat contributes to, it's very acidic, and it contributes to cancer as well. So in support, I did the macrobiotic diet with her. It was horrible. Not horrible in the sense that. Only horrible in the sense that we were so used to flavor. And I know that sounds weird, but because there's no seasonings and there's like very little salt and very little whatever, everything just tasted bland. And that's because I think we're so programmed to get used to certain tastes that we say, ooh, that's good, and then when we did the bland macrobiotic diet, it was just like, oh, do I have to eat this plain brown rice? I guess. And then the raw vegan diet actually, in this weird way, kind of had flavor again. So that was, for me, it was like, oh, good. At least I can taste something again. Although I went through withdrawals. I went through sugar withdrawals and meat withdrawals. You're surprised just how used you are to this standard American diet. And when you try and get away from it, your body just screams at you to begin with. It was difficult, but that was my way of supporting what her decision was.
Yeah, Lourdes, when you go into the diet process, I know that wasn't, the worst of things that you went through. What happened next that, when you were, I would say, getting closer to your lowest physical moments that you started going through? Tell us a little bit about that period of time that you had.
Yeah, actually, so I was doing well. And then I thought, after learning because I was doing a documentary and I really wanted to be informative and be able to educate through my own experience, what happens when you do this or that, or you eat or drink this or that. And so to find out that the certain scan actually can spread the cancer, I thought, well, I need to educate. I need to show that. And of course, that was another fight with my family. They're like, you're almost done with this. Why would you do that? You know what's going to happen. I'm like, because I need to show that.
Well, it's ironic because, and I don't mean to interrupt, but it was ironic because it was to begin with, we were all very angry with her for not doing standard American, medical advice. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with you? You're crazy. And then when we saw that the raw vegan diet was working and she was doing great, we were angry with her for saying, well, I'm going to do this thing that they're recommending that we do this test. We're like, why? Just keep doing this thing that you're doing because you're awesome now. And so it's funny because she had to fight with that as well.
Yes, I was fighting. I had to fight with it. They're like, wait a minute, this is working now. You've proved it. So why are you doing this now that you know it's going to undo it? But it was really important to me to show that because I feel that anytime anyone does something, they should do it with knowing what can happen. And I think going into doing a test without knowing those, because some people probably still do it. It doesn't change. Like this with that smoke cigarettes, and they know it can cause cancer and all sorts of stuff. It doesn't stop them from smoking. So for me, it's like if a PET scan can cause cancer, and if you have cancer, it can spread it. But this is the way they stage it. If you go, well, this is the way they stage, I'm still going to do it. Then at least you know it with knowledge. But for me, right, if I would have known this ahead of time, though I did, I would have been like, I'm not going to do this test. Mm-hmm. I don't want to spread it. But because I was in the education mode and I needed to show this in my documentary, I need to show this because now I've learned what I can do to undo it. It's just that certain things had happened during this test. You'll see it in the book, but and when that happened, everything that I had worked hard to get myself healthy was completely undone. And I mean to an extent where the cancer had spread throughout my body. The tumor under my pig got so big, we called it a baby head because it looked that large. I had 5% use of one lung at this point. I was barely breathing. I could feel the death. And I mean, I felt the death. And I don't know how to explain it more than I could feel the death. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't undo it. And no matter what I did, it wouldn't undo. And I'm like, this is strange. How can I not undo this? It felt like whatever was in there was like glue and was not letting go. And there was only one place that I could go to undo it, which was going to cost me more money than I had. And then that became another obstacle, and, that showed up. And here we are now struggling to go, how am I going to get to this place in Mexico that can undo this? That's going to cost $35,000 that we don't have. And I have a week left to live. How do we do this?
So were you given a week left to live?
Yeah. Well, actually, what they said was, I said to myself a week, because I gave myself a week. What they said is my time was up. There was no more time left. Yeah, so it was just a matter of time, like any moment. And
we've heard that story before from other people where the doctors have said, well, that's it, so go get your affairs in order.
Yeah, because there's some people that they give them 3 months. I didn't even get that. It was more like, there is no time to give you. Like it's done. And
also bear in mind at the time that Lourdes was still telling them, no, I won't do your chemotherapy. I won't do your radiation. And so that's really, I think part of it for them was like, well, that's it. You're done.
You're done. There's nothing
else we could do.
Yeah.
So off you go. And the reason why we had to go to Mexico, I just wanted to point out, is because they're allowed to perform certain procedures in Mexico that are natural, actually, that are found in nature. That will not get FDA approval here in the United States. And so literally you can't get these treatments in the United States. And so that's why Mexico had to be the place. And of course my insurance wasn't going to cover, a hospital in Mexico. So that was the big hurdle.
And even natural. So
and natural on top of it. Right.
So it was tough. And, it's like out of a miracle because we finally get to talk to one of the guys and a friend of ours, Jennifer Behrens, who I said, it's going to cost this and we don't have it. And I told her, as I was talking on the phone in tears, I said, I'm going to die and I don't want to die. And I know that I can live and survive if I get there, but I don't have the money. And then I always call her my soul sister because she feels like a sister from another time or a sister from another mother. She's just amazing. And she's like, okay, look, let me talk to this doctor and let's see if we can at least get $10,000 and get you started. And she was wonderful because she called and talked to him and he said yes. And now the hurdle was, where are we going to get $10,000? And I call my mom and I tell her the same information. I said, I have to get to Mexico. I'm going to die and I can't die. I don't want to die. I said, but we need $10,000. She happened to have $10,000 that she had been saving up. And it was just weird because everything was just falling into place like it needed.
Well, then other friends started fundraising campaigns to raise the rest of the money the rest of the way. And I was raised in a real practical household where, you don't ask other people for money. That's just rude. I mean, we were taught that it's rude to ask other people for money, and it's shameful. And here I was just begging people, just donate what you can. And so I was this different person, trying to get people to help donate. And I have to say, like you said, it takes a village, friends, family, and friends of friends and strangers that just heard Lourdes' story, donated. And we were able to raise the rest of the money while we were in Mexico. We were able to raise the rest of the money while we were down there. And our other friend, Dwayne, kind of managed that. He was like the fundraising manager for us here in the States while we were down there. And we got enough money together from doing that.
And it was amazing because the pouring of love that came from people from not just here in the States. I mean, it was like people from other countries, sending prayers and donations and their love. It was crazy. I even got letters. It was just amazing. And it was like, from then on, like they just continued to follow my journey. And I ended up having many friends, new friends that I ended up meeting through this whole journey. And it was amazing because you think you're alone, but when you start sharing, when you start really allowing yourself to be humble, to everyone, to show the true humanity of who we are, how connected we are, and how we are up to the same thing, that we all have that hope, that it's amazing. You see it and we're like, wow, this is great. This is what love is. This is what a community is. This is what a village looks like because it's not just a village in your own community. It's a village that expands out to the world.
Yeah. What do you think that did to you personally when you started seeing so many people pour in all sorts of, financial gifts, love, letters, all those things? What did that do to you personally? And how do you feel like that changed you as a person?
Oh my gosh. It brought me into a level that I didn't even know could exist. Because I personally myself have always loved people in general. Like that's always been my case. Even as a child, like I loved people, and whether I knew them or not, I may dislike something someone does, but the love that I had for people was just there. So when I saw the return love to that extent that I saw it, it was like an emotional love of a ride, because it touched my spirit, it touched my mind, it touched me physically. It's like you just felt it in every level. So that when I was feeling all these things, it was like I can't even explain it, because I don't even think there's a word that exists of the gratitude and love that I had for everyone and everything that was happening, that it made me I was on the right path and I was doing the right thing.
Mm. So you took it on yourself to almost, I would say in some ways, I guess sacrifice your body in a way to tell a story, or to use your body in a really selfless way to help a lot of people. What kind of procedure or what kind of treatment did you have when you were in Mexico that you had to pay the money for?
Geez, there was so many, and it was done daily. The basic ones were, I had four coffee enemas done daily. I had juices done daily. There were certain specific foods that were made for me that were a food combination that had to be done. There was a peri-nutrition that was done through an IV that went directly into my system that was done daily. There was the foot detox that was done twice a day or once a day.
Yeah, well, it varied. Twice a day early on.
Yeah, twice a day early on. The sauna therapy, the phototherapy, I think the phototherapy was actually my favorite, because it was
effective.
Yes, because there was like there was 3 capsules of herbs that you had to put. You had to do it inside a dark room because it couldn't see light, and it went under your tongue until it dissolved, and then you waited 24 hours before you had to go under a light. Because what happened is that when this goes into your system, the herbs itself would then like snuggle around the cancer itself. When you and gave you 24 hours to get this done, and then you'd go into this light, and then the light would then turn on and set off the photosynthesis, like the phototherapy, I say, that would then turn on the herb that was snugged around the cancer, and it would set oxygen to it. and oxygen would kill it. And it was like, at that time, I was barely breathing, right? So when they started doing this, I mean, I couldn't walk or anything. By the end of the week, after doing, I think, like 2 treatments, I was walking, I was breathing, but like everything just turned around. And the tumors that even the baby had, it was almost like gone, like you didn't even see it.
And anything that was there was super soft.
It was no longer hard. Yeah, anything was there, it was no longer hard. It was just squishy. It was soft.
And the amygdalina was the other one.
Which one was? There were so many tests. There were so many.
So there was another thing that they gave her too called amygdalina. I might be saying it wrong. It's basically natural arsenic. So like if you eat a bunch of like apricot seeds or apple seeds, it's got this trace amount of arsenic in it.
Right.
But it's
B17.
And it's B17. Thanks. And it's not like a chemical arsenic. It's a natural arsenic. But because cancer's like think of Jaws. Just this eating machine. It just eats anything you give it. It's absorbing into this B17, and the rest of the healthy cancer cells. The rest of the healthy cells in your body knows what to do with it. It's just like, oh, this is natural. Move along. You're good. They don't consume it. But cancer cells, because they're not trained that way, consume this. Basically, it's arsenic, and it killed it as well. So it was amazing the stuff that they were kind of giving her down there. And again, not available here in the United States.
No. But it was great. I was just like, okay, I want to keep doing that thing because, I mean, even when I was swollen, like all the swelling went away. Like it was just so amazing on how each one of these treatments were doing. There was also the sound therapy, which is like sound therapy, where they'd put it in the areas of the tumor and sound, and it would start breaking up the tumors. That one I didn't care too much about because it felt like my neck got thicker. but it did do its job. But yeah, the phototherapy was probably my favorite, but it was everything. There was a drink that they gave me as well, and that one I just couldn't do. I did it, and I just puked it.
So it sounds like you went to like a natural boot camp in a way to get your body back, to fight off the disease and get your body back right.
That's a perfect description. Yes. After boot camp. Yeah.
So what happened in the end? How long were you there? And then what was the final result?
Oh my goodness. I was there for 3 weeks, and by the end of 3 weeks, they did everything and checked everything, and the cancer was gone. But I did have this opening in the chest cavity that so I was drowning from the inside out. I had fluid going into the chest cavity, which was making it hard for me to breathe. So they did have, because I ended up having a problem with my lung collapse, so they put a tube there so they can remove the fluid. But the doctor came in and said, look, there's one thing that will scar that area and seal it, and you'll stop drowning from the inside out. If not, you're just going to drown from the inside out and die. So I was like, okay. And he said, you need 3 light doses of chemotherapy. Because chemotherapy is so harsh in the body that even though people see scars on the outside of the skin where it looks like scratch marks, this actually does the same thing inside the organs. But at this point, he said, even though that's not good, for you it is good because you need the scarring to seal that, and you'll stop drowning from the inside out. And
you were mad?
Oh my gosh. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I just got rid of cancer the way I wanted to. And now you're telling me to put the stuff in that's a cancer causer. But, so he was like, no.
Second opinions. Yeah,
we're like getting second opinions. And every natural doctor gave us the same answer. And I'm like, no, you got to be kidding me. And so he said, look, no worries. Get the 3 treatments, scar it, and then just cleanse all that out. And you don't have to worry about future cancer. Just clean it all out. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I thought, you know what? I got to think about this. So we left, came back here. And of course, because it wasn't sealed, I could barely breathe again. The fluid was all built back up. It was like breathing through a straw. And Chris kept saying, Dave, we just got to go do this. Let's just get it done. And I'm like, it was really hard for me to get my mind wrapped around doing it. I'm like, I don't want to do this thing. But then I was like, okay, I'm not breathing anymore. I'm barely breathing. This is not good. And we're like, okay, let's get the thoracentesis done to get the fluid taken out. And let's keep thinking about this.
And buy some time.
And buy ourselves some time. And then we did. We went Well, you tell them that part.
Well, I mean, because by then Lourdes's oxygen intake was so low, she doesn't really remember a lot of this, what has happened at that time. But basically, in Mexico, I was a participant. So this is a huge distinction from American hospitals to the Mexico hospital, is that they expected the caregiver to be an active participant in the healing, versus here in the U.S., you're just kind of in the room. And so they would have me listen to her breathing, for example, through a stethoscope. And they would say, did you hear right there? That's where the fluid level is. We have to get rid of that. And they would make me write down like all of her treatments. And then they would actually have me administer some of it through her IV so that I would learn how to do it. So it was just this different thing, because I was like an active team member versus just somebody who was there to observe. And so I listened to her chest cavity again, and we could tell where the fluid level was. And I said, well, let's just do the thoracentesis. And so we went to the hospital. And one of the other weird things that had happened when we came back to the States, and it was, to this day, we still don't know what this was. But Lourdes would get this round of fevers. And it was like clockwork. You could almost set your clock to how often. It was like every 4 hours she'd get a horrible fever. And so it just so happened to happen that she got one of these fever fits when we were in the emergency room. And they said, we need to keep her for longer. And then we wound up being in the hospital for 6 weeks, because what had happened was they did thoracentesis. And at some point in time, Lourdes said, all right, let's just do this chemotherapy and let's just do it so that I can get this lung healed. And I was shocked. And I said, oh, okay. Okay, I guess we're doing this thing now, you know? And so they gave her the first round of chemotherapy. Now, here's the difference between Mexico and here in the U.S. In Mexico, the doctor was talking about just a very specific chemotherapy and 3 light doses. But here in the U.S., there's a protocol that all oncologists, I guess, go to when it comes to, if you've got X type of cancer, your protocol is this, and this, and this, all chemotherapies, but different types. Well, they attacked her with with like 3 different types of chemotherapy, and it put her in a coma. Her body shut down. Basically, she couldn't breathe anymore, and they had to induce a coma. And so, obviously, that was my low point, because I thought she was going to die at that point. But Lourdes doesn't remember all that. No. I mean, maybe a good reason. I don't know. Maybe a good thing you don't. But
yeah.
But I think she finally came around to having consciousness again after she had a feeding tube in her throat and on a breathing machine, and we were in the hospital for 6 weeks. But what had happened was, because Lourdes was still keeping up with some of those holistic regimens, on the down low, mm-hmm. I think that contributed to the fact that after 6 weeks, there were doctors who were releasing her, telling her, I thought you were going to be leaving through the morgue. I mean, you were done. You were in ICU. We had you as worst case scenario, but here you are leaving. You're out of here. So,
yeah. There was actually one doctor who, because I had so many doctors, one for each thing, for the heart, for the lung, like every doctor you can think of. And so each one had to come in to sign me out to release me. And the one doctor came in and he's like, you probably don't remember me, which I didn't. He said, but I'm one of your doctors. And I just want to tell you that when you came in, I didn't think you were going to leave alive, but I'm happy to say that you can go home today. And so, it's funny because to hear someone say that, it's like, oh, they thought I was done.
Yeah. Let's say, going through the physical part does one thing to you, but, after you get to the ups and downs and the, everything's working great, and then all of a sudden something else happens and it takes a turn for the worse, and then it's raising money to go to this because you don't think this is going to happen. Then you finally get the money. It's an emotional roller coaster going all the way through. And now that you're getting toward the end, you're still like on an emotional roller coaster. I talk a lot about mental health on the podcast, and because I feel like it's a topic that a lot of people don't really talk about when it comes down to cancer, because we all get really, into the physical side of cancer. But, if we take a step back for a second and talk about the mental health side, like, mentally, what was this doing to you? I would say, and I like to connect mental, emotional, and spiritual together lots of times because they all work together. But, what was this doing to you mentally? Did you have moments that you were losing hope and then you would gain it back? Or did you have hope the entire time? What was it like for you?
It's interesting because it's one of the things I even mentioned in the book, because mind, it's mind, body, and spirit. And your mind is so powerful that I think that if you know that no matter what is going on, you're going to be okay, you end up experiencing that experience. And I think when you start having doubts and hopes now, because I think the brain create certain things in the body so that when you're thinking it's over, then the brain starts doing everything with the body to make it over. And I think when you go, no, I'm going to be fine, then the brain starts doing the things it needs to help you to achieve that, even when things start showing up in your life or to achieve that. So even at my lowest point, I know for everyone else, they were all freaking out and had different thoughts. But for me, it was really hard to explain. I just knew I was going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I think, now mind you, it was physically draining, so emotionally that affected me, because it was like I was just tired of feeling sick. I was tired of feeling death. I was tired of feeling all that. And it's like, come on, I know I'm going to be okay, so let's be done with this already. Why am I still here? There was a couple of times where I was frustrated because I knew I'd be okay, but it just felt like this long journey. And I'm like, come on, I'm tired of not being able to breathe good. I'm tired of my body hurting. I'm tired of all these tumors. And I was so sick of it. But I had I had these great experiences spiritually where I had a lot of visits. And, it's like a couple of times I had, I call them light beings because their bodies were shaped like human, but it was light. Like the light was shaped into a human being. And, they spoke with me, but like telepathically. And, I would see these things and they were showing me. And in fact, we have, even on YouTube, we actually have a video that when I was in Mexico, I had this visit. And the moment I had this visit, I immediately told my husband, turn on record me, turn on the camera, because I'm going to say everything that I'm seeing and what they're telling me, because I want to record. I don't want to forget this. And so he picked up the camera. So I'm literally describing everything I'm seeing, and I'm having this conversation with this person, with this man. It was two men. It was one, and then it became this other guy. But they were all spiritual beings. Like it was like almost like I was at a different. It's hard to explain because it was almost like I was in a different dimension at the same time I was here. Mm-hmm. But I had those kind of visits. And even when I was in a coma, I had this entire experience where I actually thought I was in this Asian country and that they were pumping me with all these herbs. And so when I woke up and I saw it was in California, I'm like, wait, what? It got confusing because I'm like, wait, I know, I remember I was in this hospital, but it was an Asian hospital and it was Asian people and it was Asian writings and I couldn't read it and I couldn't understand, and so I was like, this is weird. So I felt a little disoriented and kind of confused because it was like all of a sudden I'm in this place that while everybody was seeing me in a coma, I was seeing everybody, but in a different space. And so, but I had many visits and many conversations, and it was always understood that I was going to be okay. So for me, it was like, well, if I'm going to be okay, why am I still going through this? Right. When am I going to be done climbing this mountain? And so, so for me, I think it's because I knew I was going to be okay is why I was okay.
Chris, what about you? Whenever you saw, you're on the roller coaster as well too. So whenever you saw the moments where she's going back and forth, obviously your emotions probably, took that ride as well too. What were you thinking, through the ups and the downs, and how was your health being the husband? Because obviously there's nothing you could physically do to make her cancer go away. You had to be supportive. Like what was your emotional life cycle like during this time?
I mean, it's. I was obviously feeling, like you said, I was feeling it all. I was feeling it, but we had rules in the household, and in fact, family members would come visit Lourdes, and they'd be mad at my daughter because she gave them these rules, and the rules were, we don't speak negative, around Lourdes. We don't have negative conversations. We don't, we don't cry. No, none of that carrying on like things are bad. And that's just the environment we created around Lourdes. But there were alone moments for me where I was just breaking down and in the shower, for example, I didn't want Lourdes to hear me. But what had happened was right before we went into Mexico, Lourdes was really, really bad. Like she looked physically green, which is, a weird thing to see your wife look like. And, when we got there, I was terrified, not just because, we were going to Mexico, we were going to like a foreign country. And I thought, my God, what happens if something goes south? I mean, I'm not, it's not like I even speak Spanish. So it's not like I can be like, get us out of this, situation. Like
Right.
I was scared. And it's funny because there was a doctor down there. His name was Dr. Diaz. And, he was Lourdes's, I guess, overall doctor. He was not the cancer doctor. So there was two doctors, one that would just deal with her cancer. And then the other one that was just kind of like her overall doctor, just to monitor her health. And his name was Dr. Diaz. And he kind of saw me how I was when we got down there. And he took me out of the room. He took me into a different room and he had this conversation with me. And he said, look, I could tell that you're feeling this. And I could tell that you're depressed. And I could tell that you're scared. And I said, well, I am, and I kind of pushed back a little. I said, well, of course I am. And he said, well, you're not doing her any good. You need to stop that right now. And you need to turn this around and you need to only be positive around her. And that's what's going to help her. And it was funny because it just needed somebody to tell me or to point it out to me, I guess. Because it was after that conversation, I created this mantra and this mantra saved me through the rest of the journey, except for one point. And the mantra was, Lourdes is alive. And so I got clear that, and it was after this conversation, and I have to think a higher power kind of put this thought into me, because I got clear that any outcome that Lourdes had that was negative was my own creation, because it wasn't real.
Right.
You can't live in the what if scenario. Well, what if she dies? What if this happens? Well, what if an asteroid hits the planet tomorrow? I mean, we could all be in that fear if we want. But right now Lourdes is alive. And so I got real clear that what's happening right now is that Lourdes is alive. And so that was my mantra going forward. It didn't matter what Lourdes was doing as far as coughing and the not breathing and having to have the lung expanded, which was a painful process for her in Mexico. I kept saying to myself, Lourdes is alive. Right now, Lourdes is alive. And when you start to realize that her being alive is what is so, all those weird thoughts of what could happen fall away, and you have a different mindset. And so I was strong all the way up until the coma, when Lourdes was forced into the coma. And I literally watched her roll backwards. You can only describe it as lifeless because she was dying at that point. I mean, all the machines were going nuts. And I kind of lost control of my personal mantra. And I knew it. And internally I had this screaming fit that was going on. And I started crying. And there was a nurse that I feel bad for her now, but there was a nurse that tried to come up and comfort me. And she tried to hug me, and I kind of pushed her away. And I'm like, nah, I need to hang on. Let me get this mantra back into me, because I need to get now. I need to get back to now. And so once I was able to start to reiterate that Lourdes is alive on machines. I mean, she was on machines at this point, but she's alive. Once I got clear that Lourdes is alive, I was able to find my balance again, and that carried me through the rest of the journey. So, that'd be my advice to any caregiver, is to stop living in the what ifs, because that's just going to drive you bananas. Start getting clear on what's happening right now and only right now. And in any circumstance, it's always going to be that the person you love is alive right now. And that's all possibility. There's no dead ends in that thought process.
I love that. That's so true. And just what you're saying to me is, no matter how bad she is at the moment, you still had the gratitude there, which I feel like is the total key to happiness, the gratitude that she is still alive. And, as long as she's alive, there's an opportunity that she'll get better. And I love that. That's, coming from a caregiver standpoint, that's not a perspective that a lot of people, I think get to hear a lot. So I appreciate you sharing that. And Lourdes, when you said something earlier about you just knew you were going to be okay, it's funny because I had the same feeling as well whenever I stopped my chemo a little early, just because I knew my body was done. Like I was like, this isn't gonna, I don't know. It was a weird, I can't even explain it kind of feeling, but I just knew that my body was done with the chemo, and I just knew that I was going to be okay. And, for me, my faith is very important to me. And, but it's something that you do kind of struggle with a little bit. It's like you have those moments of doubt, like we all do, like where maybe days where you thought you weren't going to be okay and you had to remind yourself that you were going to be okay. Was there anything specifically that you did when you had those like brief moments of doubt to help remind yourself that things were still going to be okay?
Yeah, it was, and that was the thing, because I understood that in this communication, in this information that I got through these beings, that I was going to be okay. And even before I ever even got bad, I knew that at the end I was going to be okay. So I had to remind myself, you're going to be okay. Like that, you're here for a reason, so you can't go. So you're going to be fine. And even my granddaughter, which is so funny, she was itty bitty, and she'd always tell me, Nana, you got to breathe to be alive, and you got to promise me that you'll never leave me. And I told her, I said, honey, baby, I will never leave you. I will always be here with you. And so having her say that and having this conversation with the beings and having this understanding that I can beat this, I just had to keep reminding, because, it's so funny because it's even in life. We'll be doing really good, and then something shows up, and then we get doubt. So we have to go back to, wait a minute, remember, everything, it's going to work out. You have to just kind of get back to your goal. And my goal was to be healthy again. My goal was to beat this cancer. So I had to remind myself, this is your goal, so that's what you're going to do. And you just had to keep going back to that.
I love that. So after everything that's happened, tell us about where you're at now and how you're doing health-wise, and then, what your life looks like at this present moment.
Oh my goodness. I'm doing really, really well. I'm much healthier now than I've ever been before I even was diagnosed. I feel, that I'm always getting better. Like, even though I'm at my healthiest, I know that I can even improve that, and I can keep, so I'm always working on always improving even that. And it's helped me to keep learning more, searching more. I love learning all the time about new things that show up. And in the process of that, it's like I now get many people that contact me, and that people contact me almost every day. Mm-hmm. That's dealing with cancer. Either they're dealing with cancer, most of them is usually they're dealing with cancer, or their friend is dealing with cancer, or their family member is dealing with cancer. And some don't want to do the treatments, and they want to do it, the route I took. And others want to try both. And others, so it's like there's all these different types of people. And then some, in fact, I should say many are that they were sent home already to die because there was nothing else they can do after all the treatments they've gone through. And that's actually the majority, right? So, and this is people from all over the world that contact me daily. And so what I do is I help comfort them, help give them hope and inspiration. And it's great to see, because I always make it a point to, when I talk with any of them, is that it has to be a teamwork. Because if I'm just talking to them and helping them, but they have to also battle their family or their friends, that's going to be hard on them. So I like to talk in a group so that they all have the same information at the same time, so that they help each other, so that they're helping this person achieve what they're trying to achieve. And it's great to see when, there's one, I think, from Siberia, and his mom had cancer. And so, I sent them different recipes and things that they can do. And I tell them, it's like, I'm not curing you. This is not curing you with fixing. It's just that your body is so perfectly built that when you give it what it needs, it does its job. It's just depleted from that. And even if a person wants to do chemotherapy or radiation, I never discourage anyone to do what they choose to do. But then I tell them, so let's build your body up. Because you want to make sure that if anything ever happens, your body's built enough to handle it, and it can take care of it. So there's nothing future that's going to happen, or something's not permanent, So it's really about helping others now. So even with my, I'm still an actress. I still film. I'm in several films now. We're about to do, our movie. I'm playing myself. Our book is coming out. Actually, our book is out. Our documentary is going to be coming out in a couple months. So now with this, I'm actually gearing myself that everything I do, I want to do that's going to make a difference. So if I do a film, I want it to be inspiring in some way. There was one called Create the Fast Life that's out on Amazon right now. And I love that one because in that story, I'm this mom who ends up with cancer, and I'm a single parent with these 2 children. And my son, who's the eldest, now he's craving this fast life. He wants money quick and all this, and he loses himself. And I liked the story, and I took on this role because it got to show that sometimes you need God in your life. Sometimes, the material can get in the way and you lose yourself. So I like movies that tell messages. And that's now my goal is not just to do those type of movies, but that's mostly the goal, is to always do something that's going to be a difference. So I help others now that are dealing with cancer and all other kinds of sicknesses. But at the same time, I now make it a point that with anything I do, it's always going to be to inspire.
You said earlier during our show, our conversation, that you knew your life was meant for more, and you knew that you had a special calling on your life. And, I felt that way myself since I was younger. And now that I'm doing what I'm doing, a part of everything else that goes on in my life at the moment, that, it's so weird how we kind of have foreshadowed that on our lives. And you think it's going to be one thing, but then it turns out to be something completely different, that you probably a path that if you had to choose, you probably wouldn't have chosen to go the cancer route. But the very fact that you went through that, and you're taking that and you're wearing it as a badge of honor, and you're using your experiences to dramatically change people's lives. And even if you're not changing a life, you're building a community which does link people, and you're allowing that path for them to connect with someone or something that's going to really, draw them in and make them feel not alone, and give them advice and educate them. And there's so many different things that you're doing every day. So I know that's got to be very, overwhelmingly satisfying for you to have that, and really gives you the strength you need to keep pushing forward. And I know it's not easy to, spend so much time, filming and doing all these things you guys are trying to do to get this message out. But I think what you're doing is a phenomenal thing. So, definitely want to applaud you guys on that. Your book's out now, and it's called Our Journey to Option C. And I'm going to put a link to your website and the Amazon link in the show notes so people can go check that out. If you had to give them a little bit of a idea of what Our Journey to Option C is about, what would you tell everyone?
Option C, you got option A and option B and option C. Option A is doing everything the doctors tell you. You don't do anything other than just what they say. Option B which is actually, we've met quite a few people that do this, including my dad, that they do nothing at all. They just let
This is God's will.
It's God's will, whatever, and they live their life the way it's been. They don't change a thing. And option C is really educating yourself in everything and taking your life back into your own hands and learning things that you see that work with you. Like for instance, like you said, you knew you didn't need any more chemo. You stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be option C. You just took what you needed and you moved on because you're like, I'm good. And that's what option C is about, is learning and listening to your body, figuring out what's going to build up your body. And if you know this is going to get rid of it, then do that. And once you're good, then you move on. And the book is really talking about our journey through that and what we've learned through it. And I even have some recipes on there, things that I buy myself that I keep in stock in the pantry, different links of things that they can get that I myself purchase that I think is important to keep.
Books that we read.
And books that, a whole list of books that I read in the process of all that. So that, we did quite a few things that is in the book. So the book would really kind of narrow out not just like our journey and how we met and the things we went through and what it took to get to the other side, but also the things that we actually did. And that includes the recipes and books and the whole thing.
I love that. Thanks for explaining the option C thing too. Like, said A is do what the doctor says, B is do nothing, and C is more like being a self-advocate and really educating yourself, choosing your own option. I love that. That's such an interesting way to think about cancer. And, I highly encourage people to do that because, depending on the type of cancer you have and all those things, there's obviously a lot of different options with different people's treatments, but empowering yourself to not just take, the first thing that you hear because you're so afraid of dying and choosing to run towards that route, or choosing to completely give up is not necessarily an option as well too. But the point of educating yourself, choosing your own option, being your own self-advocate, really diving into your body. And I really feel like that gives you something to look forward to and something to live for as you continue to go through your journey. And we don't know how things are always going to turn out, but we are responsible for our part. And I definitely think that you obviously did your part and are continuing to do your part with this. I like to think of our lives as a mosaic piece of art. It's a lot of broken pieces put together to make something beautiful. And your life, has so many pieces to it. And we spent the past hour today discussing the broken pieces of an illness that obviously you didn't choose and you didn't cause, but just happened to you in your life. And, like a lot of mosaic pieces, when you shine a light on them, you can really see the beauty in that. And I think, you telling your story through your book, the documentary and the movie that you have coming out is really shining a light on you and your piece of work. And I think everyone's going to get to see the beauty in that and the beauty in your story. And Chris, for you as well too, I enjoy the end of our conversations because we really get a chance to speak a lot of truth over people. And Chris, just being by Lourdes' side throughout the entire time, this is something that she could not have done alone. And your comfort and just your presence there and your support and, just you challenging her, I'm sure through certain times, all has led up to this moment. And, you, to this day, you can still say Lourdes is alive, and you can be even more grateful now to see her go through all the tough times. And, I'm sure that challenged your marriage a little bit as well, but you probably have a stronger bond with each other now than you did before then. But, as a caregiver, I think that, you don't go unrecognized as well too throughout the entire process. So, again, you being a part of this story, I think is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So as we conclude today's interview, if our listeners want to connect with you guys, I know your website is called createoptionc.com. You guys are on Facebook and Instagram as well. And like I said, I'll put a link to your book that's out now. And as the documentary comes out in the next couple of months, we'll be able to provide people information for that. And then when your true story comes out, even after that, we'll definitely continue to follow up with you guys and share all the great work that you're doing. And especially, and I know we barely touched on this earlier, Lourdes, but what you're doing for the Latin community, I think is amazing as well too. Really being a pioneer and the cavalier of leading that charge is, it's hard to do a job where you don't have the blueprint, but you're doing a great job so far with all that. So, so everyone be sure to go check out createoptionc.com, connect with Lourdes Lourdes and Chris through Instagram and Facebook. And if you guys don't have anything else, we'll conclude today's interview.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Sounds good. We'll stay in touch, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to 1%podcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.